It's Jillian, the Director of Customer Success from Corus. I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, Drew. We actually got a lot of feedback when we asked you guys to vote on what you would like to see in these videos. So first and foremost, thank you. What we're going to focus on today is specifically how to do a global A/B test. This is super important for agencies and clients alike. One, because this is a nice way that you can actually use minimal costs to figure out A/B testing. Drew, why don't you shed some light? I know this is definitely in your arena. Why would an agency might want to do this type of testing? What's important about A/B testing?
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty standard operating procedure for any agency, any marketing group. Essentially what you're trying to see is like, we've got two different choices and we want to see which of these choices is going to get us the desired result. I think in what I just said, though, you can see that there are some inherent challenges in fully executing an A/B test correctly. In a lot of cases, what we'll see with clients and discussions with what they're doing is they're trying two completely different things that have two completely different goals and trying to think of those in the same way. And so as a result, you'll get data and results that really aren't that useful. So it's really important, even as something as simple as like doing an A/B test of a subject line in an email. You obviously have to think about like, okay, so if we're trying two different messages in the subject line of an email, what is our desired goal? Our desired goal will be a higher open rate, right? That's the only thing that we can really measure in an A/B test. That's a very big example. On the other end of the spectrum is what we'll be showing today, which is actual campaign creative testing and A/B testing, media. And so in that sense, what you want to do is try to break that down the parts and think of it again in that simplistic example that we have, where you're saying, okay, let's use two different creatives or assets here, but we want those assets to have the same desired outcome, right? So maybe it's going to our website or purchasing a specific product. We want that end goal to be the same. And so what we're really truly dialing in on is the message that we're using here. And we're seeing, are people responding differently to the message that we've created? So you got to break down the component parts and think of it that way. But it's a really, really helpful tool. And to your point, if you can do it before you get ready to launch media, so before you start spending on digital ads, TV ads, radio ads, what have you, you can potentially save yourself a lot of headache and challenges down the road. So that's why this is a really important skill to have, and this is a really great exercise. So I'm excited to see this in action.
Yeah, all super great points. And I'm sure you're probably preaching to the choir based upon who's on our audience base. So that's all great feedback. Let's go ahead and jump into the platform. What I want to show you guys is more so the capabilities of how we would suggest you build out this type of A/B test. And then obviously I'm going to pick Drew's brain as we build out the survey or view the survey that has been built out, just so he can actually chime in and give examples of why this is important. So as I'm in the survey here, what we've done is actually created two questions that include a video, media, image link. And if you guys remember, you can actually add imagery and media within each of the individual questions. Right underneath the question bar, there's just an add a multimedia/text button. I'll go ahead and show you guys that right now in advanced editing, just for a quick refresh. You guys can actually plop in YouTube links directly, so you don't have to worry about doing coding or building in some sort of iframing. We already did all that heavy lifting for you. So you'll just select this YouTube link and then of course select your actual YouTube link and place it within there. You can also change out the framing, a couple different varieties. So as you can see, you can place the text below the question. This was just a simple no response question that we added the multimedia, since we're not going to be asking a required response from the particular respondents. So I'll go ahead and back out of this. So again, what we've done is actually create these two videos on this same page. Now you may be asking yourself, well, that's weird. You're going to see the same video. And that's where randomization comes in. I know we've briefly chatted about randomization, but this is a great example of how you can actually utilize that within the Corus platform. So there's a couple different ways that we can go about this. So what you can actually do is up here, hit page settings, and you can randomize questions by showing a specific number of the actual questions to the respondents. So in this particular case, we want to show one of the videos to the respondents, and then we're going to divvy this up based upon however many responses there are to do as even as we can of a 50-50 split. Thankfully, that logic is already built into the Corus platform, so there's not anything that you need to do on your end other than just monitor as responses come in through the dashboard. Remember, that's real time. So once you select that, you can go ahead and hit save. And as I've already noticed, this randomization little bar over here is on. So again, a great thing about Corus is we try to call out what's happening with each of the individual pages. This is because we want to make sure that if you guys are reviewing it with multiple team members, they can go on and say, oh man, is randomization on? Therefore, that COD is already visible. So in this particular use case, we actually showcased videos. So Drew, why don't you talk about some tips of what types of assets that people should think about in relation to how they're capturing A/B testing?
Yeah, it's a great point. So again, going back to what I initially was talking about, right? We tried to pick two assets that were different enough that we would be, and our goal here is we wanted to test message recall. So you'll see in the follow-up questions that what we're trying to do is understand, are people remembering what the message of the advertisement is, and do they remember who the advertiser is, right? So that's our ultimate goal. So we wanted to pick assets that were similar enough in that they kind of had the same ending message. So we picked, Geico has got their famous slogan, and basically trying to get people to go to geico.com or call the Geico number. So they had a very specific call to action that was the same, but the tone and kind of the layout of the ads was very different, right? So one is very humorous and meant to be kind of probably targeted at a younger audience, whereas the other is a little bit more classic and kind of mascot based. So again, when we're thinking about these tests, right, we want the audiences to be overlapping, at least partially. We want to be testing, again, our call to action or our conversion here. In this case, it's message recall and it's knowing the brand. But we want the actual assets themselves to be different enough that we know that that's the factor in why somebody behaved the way that they did. So it's again, it's something that you and your team will get a little bit more comfortable with as you work through it. And certainly that's where Corus is a great tool, because you can kind of, you got a little bit more margin for error. You can try this out. You can be like, okay, it seemed like those assets were maybe too close together. There wasn't enough differentiation. We didn't, notice any kind of difference here in conversion, or those were vastly, different, and we didn't do a true A/B test here. So that's a good way to start to think about the assets that you include.
Yeah, that's all really valid and great points. And you can use a variety of assets. As I mentioned, we have YouTube links that can be plopped in here. You can use imagery. We've tried to incorporate as much as we can as far as doing these types of tests for multimedia assets. So those should all be available within the advanced editor when you select a certain question type. So let's jump right into the follow-up questions. As Drew mentioned, this is more so just part one of what we're trying to get through in relation to this survey. So what we've actually done is created a separate page with a ton of follow-up questions. Something that Drew mentioned is recall. A lot of the times you'll get surveys and it'll ask you the very next question, what brand was that? Hopefully if the user was paying any sort of attention, they're gonna know immediately what the brand was. That's at least the hope. However, the way that we've structured this particular survey, we want to ensure that we're getting the why behind and getting the what. What are people feeling? Were they paying attention? What stuck out to the actual user? And then followed up by the brand recall. So as you can see here, we've built out a variety of questions. So we have some single choice, some select multiples, and then we, of course, have a redirect say, can you recall the video of the advertiser? And this is where we'll specifically ask who the brand was. So just quickly to go through each of these and kind of the logic, would you buy the product and the ad based on this advertising? I think this is a huge benefit to doing a survey in relation to A/B testing. Drew, you can chime in after I finish this thought, but I think that a lot of the times you're getting people that are asking you, are you recalling this message? But truly, we're in an advertising game. You want to sell product. Drew, talk to us about the weight of this type of question and why it's so important to be able to ask it.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, right? At the end of the day, the goal is, your goals could be myriad, but at the end of the day, you're trying to sell product. And so seeing if there's any kind of major difference between people's willingness to buy is a great way to understand if they responded positively to an advertisement. Now, I had mentioned before that we were testing message recall. So another option here, instead of saying, would you want to buy this product, would be to say, do you remember the key value of the advertisement here? So do you remember, was this an advertisement for saving money? Was this an advertisement for, a BOGO that was about to happen, or, a new product that was getting set to launch? So mark your calendars kind of thing. So there's a couple of ways that you could do this, but in this specific example, as we've written it, we're actually measuring some form of kind of conversion rate, right? So the people's ability and willingness to purchase the product, which is again a fairly standard operating procedure for any kind of advertisement.
Absolutely. I think you hit it right on the head also, because we can actually ask this question, right? When you're running Google A/B test or even a Facebook messaging test, you can't specifically know if they would buy the product if you're doing testing, other than if they're actually clicking through and purchasing. This is a good kind of gut check. One, to understand if your messaging is clear, and then also two, if your message is resonating with the audience that you're going after. Another great feature of Corus is we actually, depending on the global stance or what country you are actually releasing the survey, as you guys remember, we have a large panel, over 80 million respondents across the entire world. There's different demographic information that comes back with each of those countries. So for example, in the US, automatically you guys are going to get back age, what region they're in, sometimes their zip code, what their household income level is. So you're going to be able to tie in a bunch of data set with this entire survey that we're doing, and you're going to be able to recall and actually cut the data based upon those demographics. So again, a super crucial piece of just learning more about your audience. So something you said really kind of got me thinking specifically with this, would you buy the product and the ad based on the advertisement? Let's actually walk through a redirect here. So let's go ahead and redirect and say that the person said yes, they would like to buy the product. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a redirect, just select redirect. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do a question. As you guys remember, there is some architecture structure that we need to keep in mind as we're building out redirects. If we're just looking for a person to go to a specific question, we can actually just hit question. However, if we're looking to add in any type of if logic or a follow-up question to that question, we'll actually need to add in a page. So let's go ahead and just start off with a question, and then maybe we'll do a page as the second redirect so we can show you guys what that looks like as well. So we're going to go ahead and add a follow-up. Another really cool feature of Corus, if you have a simple follow-up that you want to have added to multiple questions, it actually is going to save that as a follow-up, so you don't have to type in that question every single time. So again, trying to be as efficient as possible. So again, they said yes, they would like to buy the product. So let's go ahead and maybe do a select multiple. And again, kind of piggybacking off of Drew's thought process of timing, let's say, when would you like to purchase? I'm going to go ahead and you can click into Advanced Editor directly from here as well, and it's going to populate this specific question. So don't worry about it redirecting you back to the question that the redirect is on. And if that wasn't confusing, just think of like a string being pulled through all of these questions. So as you guys remember, best practice, let's create an export title. So when purchase. I typically just use really short phrases. Obviously get with who's ever downloading and working your guys' data to understand what those will look like. We're gonna switch this to vertical answers. And I'm gonna put just some very generic things, right? This is an interesting question because depending on the product, so for example, Geico Insurance, when am I going to be purchasing? The purchase cycle could be anywhere from next week to 6 months to a year, depending if I'm a homeowner, if I'm purchasing a vehicle, on life's kind of scales, if you will. So we'll go ahead and put in just a variety of options in here. I'm going to cap it at 6 months, but obviously you guys know your audience and you know what your guys' purchase cycles look like. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save. And again, that's going to redirect people who selected yes on that initial question. To go back to the question, you can simply hit this arrow right here and that'll take you back. And then also if you wanted to edit your follow-up for whatever reason, there's a nice little button down here that just says edit follow-up, and it takes you directly to that screen again where you can hit advanced editing, or as you remember, you can actually edit directly in the question. We'll go ahead and hit back. So Drew, what do you think people really gain from building out these types of questions specifically to brand recognition? You've mentioned recall a lot. I know that Facebook, for example, has a feature that you can actually ask people, hey, do you recall seeing this ad in a couple of days? Maybe talk through why this is a little bit more powerful than that type of data set, in just an example, if you can think of one.
It's a great question. So I think why what we're going through is particularly powerful is, one, you're asking people's interaction with an ad that they've just seen. So, you're going to see some like degradation of people's memories, effectively like the data that you get when you're being asked, like, you were served an ad a few days ago, do you remember it? A lot of people will be like, yeah, I think I do. Or maybe they've seen another ad elsewhere. Most agencies aren't just running Facebook ads, they're running display ads, they're running other paid media. And so, people can kind of convolute what they've seen or heard or posts that they've done. And so it becomes a little bit harder to tie it directly to the specific asset that they saw. Not that that's not a great tool that Facebook has, and you can do a lot of powerful things with it. But in this instance, we've got kind of our controlled, almost laboratory experiment here where you've seen the ad. We're going to ask you specific questions about that ad. And then at the very end of it, we're going to ask you, like, please, like, do you remember who is advertising here? And then type it in. So it's a really, really controlled way of understanding, like, these assets as we've created them, are they doing what we want them to do? And then from there, maybe we do want to run some post-campaign launch surveying to say, like, okay, is it behaving the way that we believe it's going to behave? So I think it's really important in that sense. And then the other part is that, again, if you're asking somebody about an ad that they saw several days ago, there's a very finite few questions that you can ask them about that. It's probably going to be like, do you remember what the product was? Do you remember the brand? Do you happen to remember anything about pricing or value or timing, as you've mentioned? But that's about it. Here, we can ask a lot more questions. We can get a lot more detail about their specific interaction with this ad. We can ask them, do you like the tone? You just saw it. Is this the type of ad that you respond to? All of those things. So I think it's really value add. Again, I'm not saying that these are mutually exclusive. I think using those tools for your digital ads is something that I do all the time, and I think that they're really powerful. This is a slightly different and also really powerful way of viewing your creative.
Yeah, excellent point. I think utilizing as many tools, and as you know, as a marketer, you have a ton of tools in your toolbox. And I think this is a great addition to complement all of those other assets that you're reviewing. You also mentioned timeliness. I think this is a great example of how you can actually get feedback almost on the fly from people that have just viewed and reviewed your ad. I know I'm guilty of it all the time, but I'm on Facebook looking at family, I'm looking at memes, I'm looking at updates from my favorite restaurants. It's not always as crucial for me to see an ad from maybe even someone who I'm a huge advocate of, and recalling that a few days later, whereas this is immediately in the moment. So that's a great point. So let's go ahead and build out one more page. Really quick though, Drew, do you have anything else? I just feel like we could talk about that particular question over and over again.
Yeah, one other thing I wanted to add there is, and we briefly touched on it, but the timeliness factor, if you're one of our agency friends that's listening to this, what's really great about this is that this is something that you can run in a very short period of time. So let's say you're getting ready for, a client presentation in the next few days. This is something where you can get a lot of feedback very quickly ahead of that presentation, as opposed to, again, with most, let's using your example of Facebook creative, I would typically let that run for several days, maybe several weeks, 2 weeks, right? If I'm running a Google optimized A/B experiment, I'm generally going to run that for at least 14 days. So you're talking about a time period that's a lot more condensed, where I can get really good information. So it's really helpful if you're in a time crunch, or again, you're kind of pre-launch of a campaign and you want some more data to talk about what that initial launch is going to look like. So I wanted to add that in there for some of our creative teams that are listening.
Yeah, great points. And also to that, this is a one flat fee cost. I know in my former agency life, I was always cringing at what numbers I was trying to put against an A/B test, because you want to be as conscious as you can with the client's budget. And this, again, is a flat fee. There won't be additional fees on top of it. We give you guys very upfront pricing. There's nothing, additional, no add-ons. As you guys know, Corus is absolutely free to use. The example we're going through is our global panel, so there is a data cost associated with it. But again, it's a one-time fee, and it's something that you can clear off with your client up front. You don't have to worry about monitoring a certain budget or turning off a campaign, as Drew mentioned, to in a time frame that maybe isn't going to give you that quality data. If you run through your budget in 3 days of the 14-day optimization test on Google, that's not going to be efficient data. So that's a great point. So let's go ahead and build out this page. So again, I'm going to just do the same question. Would you have bought the product? I'm going to select no, but in this instance, I'm going to go ahead and build out page. It's going to give you a little bit of a warning here that you're going to create a new page, and essentially you're going to move this question there now. So as you guys remember, page breaks are very important from a respondent perspective. This is also a great way for you guys to really delineate when parts of surveys end. So for example, if you're talking through products in this part and then you move into recall, we can actually build out 2 separate pages for those. So again, in the respondent's mind, it builds out those page blocks. So I'm going to go ahead and hit a redirect right here. And then again, we're going to build out a page. So what I'm going to actually do is go ahead and add new. And what I'm really wanting to do with them asking no is trying to get as much quality data as possible. So that's something to think about, with obviously a balance of being respectful of respondents' time, is what information can I really get from all of them? I don't want to leave no stone unturned essentially with these questions. So I'm going to go ahead and build out just a single choice question here. And so again, respondents have said no, they do not want to buy this product. So I'm going to ask, have you purchased from this company, purchased a product from this company previously? This is going to tell us, is it someone who actually is familiar with a brand, or someone who has no familiarity whatsoever? And then it'll also tell us specifically, is there more details around, is it just the wrong product that was shown to this person? go ahead and add in your export title. If I can't nail that in your guys' head, I don't know what else. If you remember anything, remember export titles. Drew, what do you think would be a good, I guess, point for this type of particular survey? I know that we can build this survey in a million different ways, but since we showed Geico where they're talking about specific products that they're purchasing, do you think that adding familiarity with the product, or do you think adding familiarity with the brand would be a better use case for gathering more data?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think in the world that we live in, where Geico is, I believe, currently the #1 advertising company in the world. I think they have the #1 media spend. That may have changed by the time this airs, but I think familiarity with the brand is pretty high. Is part of the reason why we use this example, is because it's an easy one for people to latch onto. So this might be an instance in which familiarity with the product, right, is, both of these, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think both of these are talking about, bundling services or something like that. So this might be an opportunity to better understand people. Do people actually understand what those bundles are, or what the specific, homeowners? I don't think we did anything here with, I know Geico has like motorcycle insurance. Maybe people aren't as familiar with that. So again, your specific example is going to be a little bit different. Your company may or may not have the brand awareness of Geico. So you just kind of have to think about that. What is more important to you? Is it understanding whether people know who you are, or is it more understanding people's familiarity with the type of product that you're selling? So again, in this case, I think maybe product familiarity makes more sense.
Perfect. So I hit that on the head, guys. Look at that. I'm an amateur marketer over here for Corus. So I went ahead and added in yes and no. So I actually am going to apply if logic, and this is a great instance or use case of this. So as you can see here, this is an example of why naming your pages are important. So it says page 3 and page 3. So what I'm going to actually do is I'm going to go ahead and just unclick apply if logic, and I'm going to save this question. You unfortunately can't apply if logic if you're not selecting a question for it to bounce back off of. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and name these pages. So again, this is more just a high level review of what's on the page. So I'm going to just call this one by product. And then for the page that we redirected and recreated for, obviously this is specific to the no. So no past purchase is what I'm going to name this page right here. So then I can go back into advanced editing of this specific question. And then I can go ahead and further apply my if logic. So what you'll do is you're going to do, in this instance, a show if. We do also offer a hide if option, and it does have a little call outs if you hover over both of these, if you have a question or if you're in doubt of which one you should use. So obviously show if questions are going to be shown only if the respondent answered the previous question that you're piping it from in a specific way. And then it's going to be hide if the answers were a certain way as well. So again, just think about what you want to do there. Also, we have and or logic. So if you have a response, again, if you guys remember from our NPS or our Net Promoter Score survey and the video that we did in relation to customer feedback, you can have multiple different options that maybe you want to gather feedback on. So if someone answered 1 to 3 on a scale of 1 to 5, if they would recommend you to a friend, that may be a detractor. So you actually want to set up your logic to be or. So then if someone selected 1 or 2 or 3, then they're shown that follow-up. In this particular case, we're only going to be piping in for 1 previous question, so this isn't as important, but it does default as or. Just keep that in mind as you're building this out. So since we know now that the by product page is labeled here, we can actually click into the question, and then we're just going to pipe it directly from no. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save there. Now again, guys, this is where we can go down a rabbit hole, and this video could be 5 hours long because we could teach you guys and show you guys all different ways to branch out each of these questions. Again, we try to keep timeliness in mind for the respondent, but again, make sure that you're getting valuable information for the questions that you are asking. It's important to make sure that you're not wasting respondents' time by asking so many questions and not getting really any different type of data sets back. So Drew, talk us through what would be, when you're building out this type of survey, why, from your perspective, are you looking for these key kind of places that we've already touched on? And we'll get back to this in a second, but why is it important to make sure that the questions that you're asking are so precise, and what makes it kind of the breaking point between asking too much and not asking enough?
Yeah, it's a very fine line for sure. I think, and you've done a really great job of this as you've been building this out, but sometimes the results that aren't the yeses, that aren't the, oh, I'm going to buy, are just as valuable, right? Because those are prospects that are potentially untapped. So, they're probably going to fall into, they'll fall into the camp of, they're never going to buy our product. They're not in the market for our product. Fine. That's not a persona that we're going to pursue. But there's going to be a lot of people here where they are the person that we want to be buying our product, and our message just hasn't resonated with them because we're not targeting them appropriately. So making sure that you're gathering information from both sides of the equation, from both the converters and the non-converters is really important. And then finding out from the non-converters why they're not converting, and potentially how you can, in future creative, address their concerns or talk to them specifically, is going to be really important. So as you mentioned, it's a really fine line, but I think you've done a really great job of gathering information from the people that are saying no, and then also gathering information from those people that are saying yes, getting a sense of when their buying window is, why they're going to buy. That's really, really important. So great job there.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's valuable to have an understanding of both of them. I think that's a mistake that sometimes we make, is that we're so focused in on the audience who is purchasing. We tend to think about, we tend not to think about, oh my gosh, what are we missing with the people who are not yet purchasing? We know who our customer base is, but what do we not know about who our customer is? And I think that's a great input of where Corus can lie in any type of marketing organization, or even creative organizations. This is really giving you more of an emphasis of the what you don't know. And I think that's where we have such a unique place in your guys' marketing toolbox, is because we can tell you that type of information. So going back to the additional questions here. So as you can see, we've built out, why or why not would you want to purchase this product? So since we did move that question, I'm going to go ahead and edit this just so we can actually make sure that respondents are recalling exactly what we're asking. The great thing too about Corus is, obviously, as you guys can see, you can manipulate anything. The actual survey that we're working on is a template, so it'll be available to all organizations, and you guys can go in and edit as you please. But again, this is just kind of our thought process of what makes it important to gathering those initial A/B test points. So scrolling down here, we talk a lot about what, I really love this question, and Drew, I'm going to pick your brain on this, but people really hone in on funny ads, right? Or so we think. You see the ads that people, make you want to cry, but this question is great. Which ads do you tend to like? Drew, from your perspective, why is this such an important question? And why do you think, if you think, people overlook this type of content quality? What are people actually looking for? This is such a great question.
Yeah, I think, it's interesting. I think a lot of times in a creative meeting or writing room, it's people have their own preferences about the ads that they themselves like. And I think that often dictates how they're going to, build out an ad for a product, maybe it's a new client or something like that. And, so that in a lot of cases that works, right? The funny ads seem to resonate. But if an ad's not funny to you, that's actually the quickest way to be turned off by something, right? It's very, again, that's a hard line to walk as well. So understanding from the people that you're polling what they like, is it worth going and trying to write a funny ad because it's, it's big risk, big reward type of thing. Or would you be better served, a great example is the Clydesdales from Budweiser, right? Like that's not a funny ad, or those are not funny ads, but they're really moving. They've got, this dramatic music, and people, like the idea of heritage and this nostalgia of Americana and things like that. So, that's a little bit more like center of the road. Like you're not taking as big a risk. You're not, maybe you're not getting that like virality that you would get with something that goes and gets 100 million views on YouTube. But you're really speaking to what the audience is looking for. So it's an important way of shaping your discussions internally to say, are we being smart about trying to write a funny ad here? Is that what people are actually looking for in this case? Because if we're going to take that risk, let's make sure that it's worth it.
Yeah, all great points. And obviously my mind always defaults to the Super Bowl, right? That's like literally the Super Bowl of advertising is the Super Bowl. But it just hits on so many points. But outside of that, I don't know if we're thinking about this tendency of what are people responding to as often. So I think this is a great question to add in this survey and to gain feedback from. Another question that we really can hone in on here is what was truly appealing about the ad that you watched. So Drew touched on this at pretty much the very beginning of the video, but what actually was appealing to users, and did they actually resonate with the message that you're trying to get across? Again, for this example, are we looking at product benefits, value versus cost? Are you in the market for a motorcycle? I think this is a great way to get more of that actual data point specific to the asset that you guys are using. Drew, do you have anything that you want to add there? Again, I just think this is a great question that we're actually able to ask right after someone has viewed the asset.
No, I think you covered that well. I mean, as with anything that we talk about here, right? If you're struggling or have any questions about how your specific service or product might fit with some of these questions, just don't hesitate to reach out and ask us. You can see on Jillian's screen, there's the intercom button in the bottom right. You can always chat at us, or you can always just email support@cor.us. If you want to think more specifically about your use case, we'd be happy to walk through with you.
Yeah. Great point. We're always here to support you guys, and we're available literally at just a click of the button here. So the last and probably one of the most crucial questions, obviously, is can you recall the advertiser from this video? So if a user selects yes, of course we want to know, who they were thinking of. So I'm going to go ahead and hit edit follow-up just so you can actually view what the follow-up is. In this case, we have a text type box where it can say who was the advertiser, and hopefully they're typing in your brand. If they're not, it could be a very interesting data point regardless. For example, if you have a brand that has similar colors to a competing brand, is that causing confusion? Do you guys not have, a very specific typeface that you're using, and you guys are switching it up a lot, and that's causing confusion? There can be a lot of insights here that are gleaned, especially to the creative team, to show you what brand is actually sticking out, and if your guys' brand, brand book, if you will, is actually working. So that is this part of the question. So again, because we did move some stuff around, I'm just going to go ahead and do a little bit of cleanup here. So I'm just going to name this page Core Questions, and I'm actually going to move it below the by product and the product questions that we asked. Again, we chose those ones as examples, but if you guys were more interested in, for example, what was the most appealing part of the ad, you could absolutely build redirects from each of those questions as well, just as we did with the buy and if you would purchase that product. One other thing that I want to go ahead and do is I'm going to actually add a speed trap on this first page with the videos. So obviously, as you guys saw, we walked through some pretty in-depth questions. A person needed to be paying attention to understand that what they had seen and to give valuable feedback was available. So I'm actually going to put on a speeding page here. So I'm going to go ahead to page settings. And then I'm going to put a minimum time to get past this question set. I'm going to put 10 seconds. This again could be any type of asset. So if it's, takes you 30 seconds to read through, if it's text, if it's a 15-second long video, obviously make it so people are watching the entire or viewing the entire asset in that time frame. So again, that's an important thing to talk through, is making sure that people aren't speeding through. That's one of the many things that we do on our end to make sure that you guys are getting quality data back. Another thing that we do is add in red herring questions. So it'll ask questions like which number is the largest, which planet is the largest, just to make sure that people are paying attention and that they're actually reading the questions. One other thing that we haven't really talked a lot about is actually adding in languages. So as I mentioned, we have a global panel across the entire world, and obviously being conscious that, we do not all speak the same language is super important to us. So something that really sets us apart is that we have language translation directly built into the Corus platform. There's two options there. One is that the translation that's built into the platform can be used. And then another real key differentiator to Corus is that we actually have human translation that can be piped in directly into the platform. So no need to download all of your questions and share it with someone. They actually go into, a human actually goes into Corus and types in what the translation is for the question that you're looking for. A really cool thing that you can do about this too is that you don't have to do an entire survey. So for example, if you're asking something very niche, that may be a little bit of a cultural difference depending on where you're serving your survey, you may want a human to come in and translate that question in particular. Or if you're getting feedback that a word isn't translating it as you would have thought, you can also have that. We charge based upon the word. So how many words are translated, and it's roughly around 20 cents a word. Again, we're always willing to work up a quote for you guys. So again, email support@co.us, and we're happy to get that to you. So going into add languages here, Geico, I believe, Drew, is a US only brand, but we'll actually add in Spanish. As you guys know, Spanish is obviously widely spoken in the United States. So we're going to go ahead and hit Spanish. And then a cool thing also about Corus is that we actually add in flags that can be chosen to be associated with the language, because again, languages are spoken all over the world. So in this particular case, I am just going to default to Mexico, just because that is the closest Latin speaking culture next to us. So this is where you can actually add in and order translation. Also, you can default based upon your dollars or your, oh my gosh, why is the word escaping me? Currency. Your currency, that is what I was trying to say. You can default, currency. We would have thought that would be a tough one. You can default it based upon the country that you're serving. Again, you can order the fluent translation right here. We'll go ahead and just walk through as an example. So this is where you would actually select the questions and the answers if you wanted both of those to be translated. So again, if we know that this first question, watch the video, the ad below, that's probably going to be pretty standard. Maybe the question regarding, what did you guys think this was funny? What was appealing about that? There may be a little bit of a cultural difference there as far as what you're trying to say. So that might be a good question to translate. And then all you would do is hit request a quote, and then that would get you in touch with me, and we would get back to you guys with the quote. However, the platform does also give you a quote real time. So again, just let us know if that's something that you're interested in. So I'm going to go back in here. So as you can see, English is still the default, but Spanish is active. And then if I click out at this top here, it's actually going to show me English and Spanish, and it's going to convert that for people. Something that I like to do as a best practice, if you're building out a survey and adding in a second language, I typically like to have a call out. So let's go ahead and create a no response question down here. And the call out is more so allowing people to see that you can select multiple languages. Although it is very accessible when you're a respondent to select the language, it's just nice to be able to let people know that there's options. So we'll go ahead and just type in a very brief statement here. And then I'm going to go ahead and just move this up to the very beginning of the survey. As you remember, English is going to be the default. So if they're able to see this, they can then translate it to Spanish, which is obviously what we were going for. So again, we walked through several things today, several new things. If you guys have questions, sound off in the comments. We definitely want to hear from you. I'll kick it to you, Drew, to kind of give us our little sign off. But this is, again, a great tool for you guys to use, and we hope that you found this valuable.
Yeah, thanks, Julian. And obviously, we have that. If you click the link below, we still have a survey active. We will change out global A/B testing as an option and put something else in there. But we love hearing from you guys and what content you want to see. You can also subscribe to this channel or subscribe to get updates about the Keys to Success series. As always, our blog is blog.cor.us. And really, thank you guys for watching. This has been a lot of fun. I know we have a lot of exciting videos coming up and some special guests as well. So stay tuned.